The night was colder than usual, but Ethan felt nothing. He stood at the edge of the pier, staring into the black water, his reflection shattered by every ripple. Behind him, the city glowed with artificial lights, neon signs, endless windows, headlights crawling through the streets. It looked alive, untouchable. Just like the men who had betrayed him. Ethan was once one of them. A genius in the shadows, the kind of hacker who could crack into a system not because he wanted to, but because he could. Power had always been in his hands, wrapped around his mind like fire. He wasn't just a programmer, he was the architect of digital ghosts. His code could bend walls of firewalls, slip through invisible cracks, turn security into nothing more than paper. He was respected, feared, and, above all, trusted. Until the night it all fell apart. 3 faces haunted him: Marcus, Lena, and Victor. They were his closest allies, the ones he had built his empire with. For years, they had hunted in the shadows together, taking down corporations, exposing politicians, stealing from those who stole from the people. They weren't just colleagues, they were his family. Or so he thought. The deal was supposed to be their greatest heist. A billion-dollar transaction hidden behind layers of anonymity. Ethan had done the work, built the back doors, masked their trail so thoroughly not even the FBI's most advanced unit could trace them. He had trusted his team to hold the line. But when the alarms blared, when the breach was discovered and agents swarmed in, only Ethan's name appeared on the code. His fingerprints were everywhere. His identity burned across the system like a confession. And his team? Gone. Disappeared with the money, leaving Ethan in the firestorm. He remembered the raid, the pounding on his door, the shouts, the red dots of rifles glowing through the window. He remembered the look on his neighbor's face when she saw him dragged out in handcuffs. He remembered the silence in the interrogation room, the smirks of the agents who thought they had finally caught the ghost of the grid. But Ethan was no ordinary hacker. They underestimated him. In the chaos of the transfer, in the mess of codes, he had left himself a lifeline. A sliver of digital invisibility, a ghost key. While they processed him, while they gloated, he slipped into the system. Fire alarms blared, sprinklers erupted, the lights went black. And when the smoke cleared, Ethan was gone. The FBI wanted him dead or alive. His friends wanted him forgotten. And the world thought he was finished. But he wasn't. Standing on that pier, Ethan clenched his fists until his knuckles cracked. He replayed their faces in his mind. Marcus with his greedy grin, Lena with her cold, sharp eyes, Victor with his hand always ready to shake but never to hold. They had taken everything from him. His work, his freedom, his life. Now he would take everything from them. Not just money. Not just reputation. No, he would dismantle them piece by piece until the world saw them for what they really were. Until they begged for the same mercy they never gave him. The first strike was already in motion. The night wind whipped against Ethan's face as he left the pier and vanished into the shadows of the city. He moved like a ghost, hood up, steps silent, eyes sharp. Every alley, every reflection in a shop window was a reminder. He was no longer part of this world. Not as Ethan, the brilliant hacker. Not as the ghost of the grid. No, he was something new now. Something born out of betrayal. He found shelter in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The place reeked of oil and rust, but it was perfect. Forgotten. Invisible. He set up what remained of his equipment. Fragments of servers he had hidden away, drives he had stashed under fake names, and, most importantly, the ghost key he had smuggled out of the breach. That single fragment of code was his lifeline. With it, he could slip past digital firewalls and see the world without being seen. The monitors flickered to life. Lines of code rolled across the screens like falling rain. His hands, steady and sharp, flew across the keyboard. Passwords, encryptions, proxies, all child's play. Within hours, he had built a command center out of nothing. But tonight wasn't about building. Tonight was about hunting. Marcus, Ethan whispered. The name tasted like venom. Marcus had always been the greedy one. Charming, sure, but shallow. The kind of man who measured loyalty in stacks of cash. When Ethan dug into the financial networks, it didn't take long to find him. Marcus hadn't even tried to hide. He was living large, penthouse downtown, exotic cars, private security. The arrogance of a man who believed his betrayal was perfect. Ethan smirked. You should have buried yourself deeper. For the next 3 nights, Ethan studied him. Every routine, every weakness. Marcus left digital footprints everywhere. Bank accounts, encrypted chats, secret transfers. Ethan collected them all like pieces of a puzzle. But it wasn't enough to steal from him. That would be too easy. No, Marcus had to suffer. He had to watch his empire crumble in slow motion. The plan was surgical. Drain his accounts. Expose his private dealings with cartels. Feed the authorities just enough to put him in the spotlight, while erasing his safety nets. And when Marcus thought he had nowhere left to turn, Ethan would show himself. By the end of the week, Marcus's empire was bleeding. Millions vanished overnight, funneled through a labyrinth of ghost accounts. Anonymous tips flooded the DA, linking Marcus to international smugglers. His security detail abandoned him after their paychecks bounced. The once untouchable kingpin was reduced to a paranoid wreck, pacing in his penthouse as the walls closed in. Cameras caught him screaming into phones, demanding answers, begging for help. None came. Ethan watched it all from his warehouse, the glow of the monitors painting his face in cold light. He didn't smile. This wasn't about joy. This was about justice, the kind born from fire and betrayal. Finally the time came. He slipped past the last of Marcus's digital defenses and turned on the penthouse's surveillance system. For the first time in months, Ethan's enemy looked directly into a camera. And Ethan made sure Marcus knew he wasn't alone. The screen flickered in Marcus's room. The lights dimmed. A voice, distorted but sharp, filled the speakers. "Did you think I wouldn't find you?" Marcus froze. His glass of whiskey slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. He looked around wildly, but the voice came from everywhere. "Ethan?" he whispered, disbelief choking his throat. "You left me to burn," Ethan said, voice calm, almost cold. "But fire doesn't destroy ghosts. It creates them." The screens in the penthouse lit up, each one displaying Ethan's masked silhouette. "Your empire is mine now," Ethan continued. "Your money. Your power. Everything you stole from me, I've taken it back. And this is only the beginning." Marcus screamed into the silence, smashing the monitors one by one. But Ethan had already vanished, leaving only his words echoing in the broken glass. For Ethan, this wasn't victory. This was just the first strike. 3 names remained on his list: Lena, Victor. And when he was done, the world would remember what it meant to betray the ghost. Marcus had been easy, too greedy, too arrogant. Lena would not be. She was the mastermind of the betrayal, the one who had whispered in the others' ears, poisoning them against him. Lena was not driven by money alone. She thrived on control, manipulation, and fear. If Marcus was a blunt instrument, Lena was a scalpel. Ethan knew he couldn't simply crash her accounts or send agents her way. No, Lena played the long game. To take her down, he had to outplay her on her own board. The first step was surveillance. Through the ghost key, Ethan slipped into her private networks. Lena had a taste for the extravagant. A mansion in the hills, operas in Europe, art auctions masked by criminal trades. But she was also careful. Her accounts were layered, her communications buried behind layers of encryption. It took Ethan weeks to map her network, and each day the hunger for vengeance burned hotter. He barely slept, barely ate. The warehouse became his whole world, a cocoon where he evolved from hacker into predator. And then he found it. Beneath the fortress of her digital empire, a single weak point: her obsession with image. Lena recorded everything: private dinners, strategy meetings, even her lover's whispers. She thought she controlled the narrative by keeping her own archives. But in truth, it made her vulnerable. Ethan accessed her cameras. He saw the polished mask slip when no one was watching. The cold calculation in her eyes. The disdain she had for her allies. And he began to craft her undoing. The plan unfolded with precision. Ethan leaked small pieces of video into the hands of Lena's rivals. A conversation here, a betrayal there. Whispers began to spread in the underworld. Rumors that Lena was double-dealing, manipulating even those she called allies. Paranoia crept in. Her circle of trust fractured. Business partners withdrew, fearful of being the next target. She tried to silence the rumors, but every attempt only made her look guiltier. Then Ethan delivered the final blow. At a high-profile charity gala, where Lena played the part of the benevolent queen, the giant screens behind the stage flickered to life. Not with sponsor logos. Not with speeches. But with Lena's own secret recordings. Conversations of betrayal. Deals with cartels. Orders to eliminate those who defied her. Her voice echoed through the hall, venomous and cold. Gasps filled the room. Phones flashed, recording everything. Lena's carefully curated empire collapsed in a matter of minutes, the footage flooding every channel, every corner of the web. And then in the chaos, Ethan's distorted voice cut through. "You taught me betrayal, Lena. But I learned it better than you." The crowd erupted. Security rushed in. But Lena froze, her mask shattered, her control gone. For the first time, the queen had no kingdom. That night, Ethan watched from his warehouse as Lena's empire disintegrated. But there was no satisfaction in his eyes. Only shadows. Two remained. Victor, the brute, and the one Ethan feared most. The Ghost Maker, the man who had orchestrated the fire, the one who believed he had erased Ethan forever. Ethan whispered into the silence. Your turn. Victor was different. Where Marcus had been greedy and Lena manipulative, Victor was pure violence. A warlord in a business suit. He didn't care for subtlety. His empire was built on intimidation, blood, and fear. Ethan knew he couldn't destroy Victor from behind a screen alone. To end him, Ethan would have to step out of the shadows and face him head-on. So he prepared. Weapons, gear, plans. Every skill he had buried as a hacker, he now sharpened into something more primal. For weeks, he trained his body like he trained his mind, turning pain into focus. And when the time came, he struck not at Victor himself, but at his men. Factories burned. Arms deals were exposed. One by one, Victor's lieutenants disappeared, their bodies turning up in alleys with Ethan's mark burned into the ground beside them. A ghost symbol drawn in ash. Fear spread faster than fire. Victor, furious, set a trap. A warehouse stacked with cash, bait for the ghost. He filled it with soldiers, weapons, cameras. But Ethan was already there, hiding in the shadows. He watched as Victor's men waited, restless, ready to kill. And then Ethan cut the power. Darkness swallowed the warehouse. Gunfire erupted, blind and chaotic. Men screamed. And in the chaos, Ethan moved like a phantom, striking with precision. One by one they fell. By the time the lights flickered back on, only Victor remained, standing in a circle of his dead men. And there, Ethan stepped out of the shadows. Do you know what it feels like to burn? Ethan asked, his voice calm, cold. Victor roared and charged, but Ethan was ready. The fight was brutal, fists, blood, steel. Every punch Victor threw was fueled by rage, but Ethan had something Victor never understood: purpose. At last, Victor fell, broken and gasping. Ethan stood over him, his eyes like fire. You killed me once, but you didn't bury me deep enough. And with that, the brute was finished. Only one remained. The one Ethan feared and hated most. The man who had set the fire. The man who believed he had erased Ethan from the earth. The Ghost Maker. He was more than a traitor. He was Ethan's mirror. Brilliant, ruthless, calculating. If Ethan was the Ghost Maker was the Reaper. To take him down would mean the ultimate confrontation, not just of power but of identity. Because deep down Ethan knew the truth. The Ghost Maker wasn't just his enemy. The Ghost Maker had once been his mentor. The name alone was enough to send a chill through Ethan's veins. The Ghost Maker. Once, long ago, he had been a mentor, a guide, a figure Ethan admired. The man who had shown him the pathways of code, who had opened doors into networks that no one else dared touch. Back then, Ethan had believed they were brothers of the same shadow. Men who understood that information was more powerful than any weapon. But the Ghost Maker had betrayed him. It was he who had orchestrated the fire, who had whispered poison into Marcus, Lena, and Victor's ears. He had watched Ethan's life burn, not out of greed but out of design. Because the Ghost Maker wanted Ethan erased. And in Ethan's place he wanted something else: control. Ethan tracked him for months. Unlike Marcus or Lena, the Ghost Maker didn't flaunt power. He didn't appear at parties or rule with muscle. He lived like a shadow, leaving no trace except the ripples of his work. Blackmail schemes, toppling governments from the inside, controlling markets without anyone knowing. To reach him, Ethan had to give up everything human that was left in him. He stopped speaking aloud. He stopped thinking of himself as Ethan. He became only the ghost. Nights blurred into days, and in the silence of his warehouse, he whispered only one vow. When I find you, you will know fear as I have known it. The break came when Ethan uncovered a whisper of a hidden fortress. A data vault buried beneath an abandoned city subway station, sealed for decades. The place was wired with more surveillance than a military base. Only one man could have built it. The Ghost Maker was there. Ethan prepared for weeks. He studied the blueprints, mapped the tunnels, memorized the patrol routes of mercenaries that guarded the forgotten station. And when the night came, he descended into the underground. The tunnels smelled of rust and damp concrete. His footsteps echoed like whispers of the dead. He moved like a wraith, silent, precise, dismantling guards one by one until he reached the vault doors. They were massive, steel-reinforced, with a lock that would take a supercomputer weeks to crack. But Ethan had the ghost key. He pressed it to the interface and the steel groaned open. Inside, the air was cold. Screens lined the walls, showing surveillance from across the world, Politicians, generals, billionaires, all puppets on invisible strings. And in the center of it all sat the Ghost Maker. He was older now, his hair streaked with gray, but his eyes were the same, sharp, calculating, merciless. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said softly, as if welcoming a student. The conversation that followed was not of enemies, but of reflections. "You were always meant to follow me," the Ghost Maker said. "But you grew weak. You thought loyalty mattered. You thought family mattered. I cut those ties for you. I freed you. You burned my life to the ground," Ethan spat. "I remade you. Look at yourself. Look at what you've become. Do you think you could have destroyed Marcus? Lena? Victor? Without me you'd still be a child. Now you're a god of shadows." The words struck deep, because in some dark, twisted way they were true. Ethan had become what he was because of pain, because of betrayal, because of the fire. But he would never be the Ghost Maker. The fight began not with fists but with code. The vault erupted with digital warfare, screens flickering as Ethan unleashed viruses and the Ghost Maker countered with firewalls of impossible complexity. Sparks flew from servers as systems overloaded. The underground station roared with the sounds of machines tearing themselves apart. Then came the physical fight. Blades flashed in the dim light. Blood stained the concrete. Every strike was like a memory, mentor against student, father against son. Ethan fought with desperation. The Ghost Maker fought with precision. "You can't kill me," the Ghost Maker hissed, pinning Ethan against the steel wall. "Because I am you. Everything you are comes from me." Ethan's vision blurred with blood, but in that haze he saw the truth. He was not a copy. He was not a reflection. He was the consequence. The final blow came not from a weapon but from the Ghost Key itself. As the Ghost Maker lunged, Ethan shoved the device into his chest rig, overloading the circuitry. Electricity surged, lighting the vault in blue fire. The Ghost Maker screamed as his own fortress betrayed him, the servers combusting, flames roaring through the underground. Ethan staggered back, watching as the man who had created him was consumed in the very fire he had once used to erase Ethan. For a moment there was silence. Then only the roar of burning machines. The Ghost Maker was gone. Ethan emerged from the tunnels hours later, covered in soot, blood, and shadows. The city lights glimmered above him, distant, untouchable. He had avenged his family. He had destroyed those who betrayed him. But as he looked at his hands, scarred and trembling, he realized the truth. He had won nothing. There was no going back to who he was. There was no home, no peace, no family waiting. There was only the ghost. And in the silence of the night, Ethan smiled bitterly, whispering the words that now defined him. "They thought they buried me. But I was the fire all along.